Did Trump overpromise a manufacturing boom? The numbers tell a different story. Hi, this is Punching Up Podcast. I'm Tyler Shane. Remember one of Donald Trump's biggest campaign promises? I'm going to bring back manufacturing. That started as just a campaign slogan, but became one of the key themes. Trump's ideal was simple: bring factories and blue collar jobs back from across the pond. People at the rallies believe that. And it's easy to understand why. Manufacturing jobs help build middle class America. Middle class money supported families, churches, schools, stores, entire towns. So if Trump promised to bring back those jobs, you'll be crazy not to pay attention, right? Now, I'm not being judgmental when I ask this. Questions like this can only be crafted in hindsight, but here it is. Has it actually happened? Talking about jobs coming back. Never mind the speeches, the campaign rallies, or even assertions during press releases. What do the numbers actually show? Because not some of the time, but all the time, politicians' promises collide with economic realities. And that's where this story is going today. Politics is full of big promises. Campaigns are built on optimism. But once the election is over, those promises can be measured. We don't have to guess whether manufacturing comes back. We can look at the employment data and see what actually happened. Let's begin with the cold hard numbers. So, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the United States has roughly 75 fewer manufacturing jobs when President Trump began his second term. Now, if this is true, and it is, I've already checked, it puts one of Trump's biggest economic promises in a tough spot because manufacturing in America wasn't supposed to shrink, it was supposed to grow. Now, 1 month of job numbers doesn't tell the whole story, neither does 1 year. Employment goes up and down. Businesses hire people and lay people off. It's important not to overreact to a single job report. I get that. But when the trend begins, pay attention to it. At the same time, there's another piece of this story that is just as important. A lot of people hear manufacturing jobs and assume it tells us everything about manufacturing. It doesn't. Here's where I think a lot of politicians confuse people. Manufacturing jobs and manufacturing outputs are not the same thing. Imagine a factory in 1975, let's say General Motors or US Steel Corporation. Let's say it employed 2,000 workers. Fast forward to 2026. The same factory might produce twice or three times as much, but instead of 2,000 workers, it employs 600. Why? Automation, robotics, AI, computer controlled machines. Today's factories are capable of producing a lot more than the factories in the past. They just don't need nearly as many folks. That's one reason people who graduate with economic degrees often warn politicians against promising the return of manufacturing economy of the 1950s. We can't go back to the future. Now, while manufacturing employment was struggling to grow, investments in new factory constructions has taken off. Those are two different measurements, and it's important not to confuse them. Here's something interesting. According to an article published by Factory Settings, new factory building explosions in the United States has exploded in the United States during the Biden administration. It jumped from about 79 billion to more than 230 billion. A big reason for that was two major pieces of legislation: the CHIPS and the Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. Both laws gave companies federal incentives to build factories here in the United States. Now, those weren't the only reasons. There were other factors too. After the pandemic, some companies decided to move production closer to the United States. Now, if you're not going to give Biden his flowers, I understand. Building a factory is different from operating one. Construction creates temporary jobs. Factories create long term jobs. Both matter, but they aren't the same thing. That brings us to another major piece of the manufacturing puzzle. If government incentives are one way policymakers try to encourage domestic manufacturing, tariffs are another. A few economic policies spark more debate than tariffs. So let's talk about the big tariff debate. Here's where I think both Democrats and Republicans sometimes miss the bigger picture. Republicans often argue that tariffs alone will bring manufacturing back to the United States. I say Republicans instead of just Trump because I think Trump was encouraged by others to make that approach. However, many Democrats sometimes imply government investments alone will solve the problem. Now, the reality is probably harder to pin down. Companies build factories when they believe they'll make money. They look at labor costs, transportation, taxes, electricity, supply chains, political stability, regulations, trade policies, consumer demands. It's a long list. Tariffs are one factor on that list, not the entire list. They can change the economics of manufacturing, but they don't erase every other cost a company has to consider. That's why the debate over tariffs is so complicated. Supporters of tariffs argue they're meant to protect American workers by making imported goods, that is, products coming into the United States, more expensive. Critics, on the other hand, argue that tariffs can also rise costs for American manufacture that depends on imported steel, aluminum, machinery, and other companies to make their own products. Both arguments contain elements of truth. Some domestic industries benefit, others face hard production costs. And that's exactly why economists are still debating tariffs today. So maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking, are tariffs good? We should be asking, when do they work? When don't they? And who actually benefits from them? Even if tariff encourage companies to build more factories, another challenge immediately appears. Who's going to work them? The debate isn't just about creating manufacturing jobs. It's about filling the ones that already exist. Here's a statistics that will probably blow your mind. Manufacturers reportedly have hundreds and thousands of jobs open right now. Think about that for a second. We're spending so much time arguing about creating future manufacturing jobs, while many of the jobs we already have still can't be filled. I'm inclined to believe that because I have a LinkedIn account. So, why is that? Some people my age or older might immediately declare nobody wants to work. But that explanation feels too simple. Many manufacturing jobs require specialized skills. Others involve physical demanding work. Some are located far from major cities, and some simply don't pay enough to incentivize workers to pack up and move. I see this every time I'm on LinkedIn. When you look through job postings, employers aren't just looking for someone to fill a position. They're looking for people with specific skills, certifications, and experiences. So it's not always as simple as saying there's an opening job So why don't someone just take them? See there? Labor shortages usually have multiple causes. That's why I think we're asking the wrong questions all along. Instead of asking whether Americans can bring manufacturing back, maybe we should be asking what kind of manufacturing we're actually trying to build. The future of American manufacturing is is likely to be driven by industries like advanced robotics, semiconductors, what's another one? Medical equipment, defense manufacturing, electronic vehicles, AI, clean energy technology, and precision manufacturing. Those industries matter for a lot of reasons, not just because we're creating jobs, not just because we're growing the economy, but because they're becoming increasingly important to our national security and our ability to compete with other countries. The COVID 19 pandemic revealed some serious cracks in the global supply chain. Lawmakers agree that Americans sometimes strengthen its manufacturing bases, that Americans should strengthen their manufacturing bases. Now, there are disagreements, it's how to accomplish it. And that's where I think politics sometimes get ahead of economics. It's one thing to promise more manufacturing, it's another to promise the return of an economy that has fundamentally changed. What concerns me is that politicians sometimes sell nostalgia instead of preparing people for the economy that is actually emerging. Remember when Trump said that he will put the miners back to work in 2016? He promised to recreate the economy that no longer exists. That doesn't mean manufacturing isn't important. It absolutely is. It means that manufacturing economy of 2026 is fundamentally different than the manufacturing economy of 2055, of 1955, I apologize. Robots don't vote, at least not yet. Automation doesn't attend campaign rallies. Artificial intelligence doesn't make emotional speeches. It can help you write one. But those technologies are transforming factories every year. Ignoring that reality doesn't help workers. Preparing workers for the reality does. And that's really the point of this entire discussion. Manufacturing isn't disappearing, it's evolving. The question isn't whether Americans should, the question is whether our politician, our educational system and our workforce are evolved as quickly as the factories themselves. So, did Trump bring manufacturing back? At least right now, the numbers aren't backing up the promise. But that's only part of the story. The bigger story is this: Americans' manufacturing future probably won't look like its manufacturing past. That's likely to be true no matter who's in the White House. The real question aren't can we bring it back? The real questions are what products should Americans manufacture? How do we train workers for those jobs? How do we remain competitive while countries like China? And how do we make sure those jobs pay wages that can actually support a family? Those are much harder questions that campaign slogans can't fulfill. If we spend more time answering those questions and less time chasing nostalgia, we'll probably have a much better chance at building an economy that works for the next generation. But that's just my assessment. What do you think? Did Trump overpromise? Are tariffs the right strategy? Can America become a manufacturing powerhouse again? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely like to hear your perspectives. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. in this with someone who enjoys thoughtful conversations about politics, economics, and current events. This is Punching Up Podcast with Tyler Woodson, signing out.